Hello, everybody. I'm Mary Jane, a love coach, and welcome to another edition of Nice Gal Education. I love it. Or Nice Gal Rehab, whichever way you want to think of that. So today we are looking at Nice Gal Vulnerabilities and really how to guard yourself from heartache and betrayal and deception. Nice Girls in particular are incredibly vulnerable to being manipulated, being deceived, and it's often because we just are big-hearted. We deeply want to connect, we want to help and serve and support, and we also just assume that people are coming from the same sincere and genuine, heartfelt place that we are, and it trips us up. Okay, so I want to pad your heart and protect you from giving it to the wrong person, from trusting blindly, from just being exposed in a way that makes you feel disappointed and disheartened with other people and with life, and the exhaustion emotionally and depletion that can happen when those things occur. All right, so we're going to go for about an hour and a bit on this training, and again, just relax and really open your heart and your mind. I'm not selling anything other than Nice Girl training to encourage you to just really grow in your own evolution, because it is my heartfelt mission to help you to not only find the happiness and live the life that you deserve, but attract the love that you truly desire, that is deserving of you. And my feeling is that if you're on this call and you've been following me in the No More Nice Gal community, then you absolutely know what it is to be on the other side of that coin. You know what it is to have your heart broken, to be deeply disappointed, to feel like a failure, to feel unlovable because somebody failed to love you appropriately and fully and abundantly. And so let's change and rewrite that experience so that we not only heal your past, but we move forward into a future that is really truly light and hopeful, and again, fills up your heart and allows you to be the most authentic and present and fulfilled and abundant woman that you can be, which is truly who you are: light and easy and open-hearted and carefree, and just reclaim that woman who is also happens to be very strong and powerful, but just doesn't know what that looks like anymore because she's lost her way. Okay? All right, so let's dig in. I'm gonna flip over here to my screen share. Let me go into, it always takes a minute to do this part. I'm going to start the show. Great. There we go. Okay. So, Nice Gal Vulnerabilities, that's what you're here for. So we're really going to look at, what are the 7 Nice Girl, or I think we're going to do 6 today, actually, and we're going to do a bonus one that is a particular typology that Nice Girls and empaths can be attracted to. And then the Nice Girl strengths and gifts, because I think it's important to remember that it's the very thing that makes you who you are that is part of your vulnerability. So what is your gift and your challenge, which is really great to know. I'm just taking a sip of water. And really quickly, for those who might have jumped on the call and not be familiar with who I am or my work, I'm Mary Jane Kaptein. I'm the Nice Gal love and dating coach. And I'm a recovered Nice Gal. I like to say I've made every relationship mistake you can possibly think of, mostly dating emotionally unavailable men, settling for less, and giving too much. So I know the pain of loving too much and being a doormat and trying too hard to make love happen. None of that was conscious, of course, and just a giving, loving person, but that went sideways for me. All that pleasing and supporting and helping, became imbalanced in my life, and it created a lot of negative effects in relationships. So I always say I'm not that expert who did everything right. I had to do everything wrong first, and that way I can give you the, easy, more carefree, less heartache-ridden path to love, okay? Because I did all the crappy part for you. So, I decided to stop the madness and declare no more Nice Gal, and fell in love with myself and my life. And I'm asking you to declare the same. Okay, so here's what Nice Girls do, and they don't realize that they're doing it. This is all unconscious, but we literally give ourselves away to be loved, liked, or accepted. We don't trust that we're worth loving, and that is either very early imprinted into childhood, or it ends up occurring because we dated, the wrong guy who just made us feel worthless and unlovable. We experienced too much rejection, too much heartache, too much of all of those things, and began to doubt our worth. And we want to turn that around. So the questions that we're really delving into today is like, why are nice girls more easily hooked into a relationship with an emotionally unavailable, damaged, toxic, or non-committal kind of guy? And then the bonus guy that I'll be talking about at the end. And then why do we fall for like a man's potential in hopes of winning his love and commitment? And the other question we're going to dig into is, why are nice gal empaths vulnerable to the charms of the narcissist? Okay. And again, if you're not familiar, there's 5 top nice gal mistakes that we make. And, go into my other trainings if you want to understand, like, where did that get programmed and how did I turn out that way and what is that all about? But the 5 top nice gal mistakes are overgiving, pleasing, accommodating, perfecting, and trying too hard. And I wanted to familiarize you with it so that as I'm talking about it in our time together today, that you're really just have that sort of reference point to go back to, and might even begin to like drop the seed and think about, like, is there 1 or 2 of those that I do predominantly that show up in relationship that are tripping me up, that are really preventing me from attracting the kind of love that I deserve? Because I'm going to talk about how when we do those things, we send signals to men saying that we don't value ourselves, that, that can make us be overlooked or taken advantage of, or downright used, right? So, or even just, that when that energy gets projected, a man assumes that we're insecure if he is a good guy and just begins to lose attraction or lose interest in us. So it might be, why you can't get past the first couple of dates, or why you're good, after he's your boyfriend, but that whole little part, before that can really trip you up, or how you can never relax no matter, how long you've been in a relationship, that, or you're always the one doing all of the heavy lifting, all of the work in the relationship, and you can't, seem to relax and let go of that, trusting that a man will stick around and really show up for you. So if you've been struggling with all those things, we'll talk about that today. Okay, let's dig into the first one. So number 1, nice gals are too trusting. We can be naive at the best of times and or some of the time. And then, at the best of times, naturally just good-willed and big-hearted. So we tend to just trust automatically. Again, we assume that other people are coming from the same place that we are, have the same intentions. And, it's really easy after a betrayal to kind of think, how could I have been so stupid, and why didn't I see this coming, and I can't believe he would do that to me. When you're blindsided by lies or deception or manipulation, it's shocking and it's deeply painful, and I want you to know that it's never your fault. Okay, this loss of trust can happen, in one overt fell swoop or one slow kind of subtle erosion. And it's never your fault if someone chooses to betray your trust. It really is from their own actions, but it's hard in that moment not to take it personally and think, what's wrong with me? How come I wasn't enough? What did I do wrong? And here's the thing that I want you to think of is that it's really, and I'll go to the quote in a second, you never need to worry about trusting a man when you learn to trust yourself. And trust is an essential part of any healthy relationship. In other words, so in order to care about somebody, in order to be connected and choose connection, we want to need to trust people. It's the foundation of marriage. It's the tie that creates all close friendships. And without trust, there's no hope for emotional intimacy, lasting love, or inner security. And so what happens then if trust is just broken over and over, and there's a continual failure on someone's part to follow through on their commitments and their promises? How many times do we let it pass and accept the apology and just offer our trust again before we say, hey, like, enough is enough? So the fallout from trusting can really result in a deep and profound loss of self-esteem, a lack of trust in all people, not just men or women, whichever who happens to be listening, although I will often reference in terms of assuming that you're women, since that's the majority of who I serve. There's also a loss of intimacy and love, and even anxiety and depression can result in betrayals. And so, and the worst part about it is that if you've had past betrayal and deception in your life or in your family of origin and upbringing, it actually leaves you vulnerable to repeated experiences of that. And then what happens is, the most sad thing is not only that we don't trust other people, but we stop trusting ourselves. And we start to believe that, that we can't trust our choices, that we can't trust our ability to screen and appropriately, assess someone's intentions or motivations. And when you don't trust yourself, it's hard to make decisions. So I find that my nice girls either get really paralyzed and they can just stop dead in their tracks like a deer caught in the headlights, and they don't know how to make decisions, and they just feel stuck in that position, or they make really radical sort of impulsive decisions and then later regret it and then later not trust themselves over time. And we'll talk a little bit later about some of the ways or the other things that show up when trust has been betrayed. So one of the remedies to, how do we overcome that then? If you've been on the other side of betrayal and deception and someone betrayed your trust very deeply and broke commitments with you and broke a sense of you feeling like you had a steady foundation or ground to walk on in that relationship, how do you move forward from that? So the first thing is you need to heal the hurt resulting from the deception and the betrayal. And this takes time in itself, and it's kind of layered with the other part. And you have to begin to date slow and pay attention to warning signs and intuition. And that might even mean for you that the gap between the dating slow and the healing the hurt means that you don't date for a while, that you just focus on rebuilding your own personal trust. And that's the other part. You never need to worry about trusting a man if you trust yourself. I'm famous for that line. In fact, I say never trust a man, just trust yourself. But how do you rebuild that trust? Instead of looking to try to trust someone outside of yourself, it's much more empowering and fulfilling to come back into self-trust. And one of the remedies or the ways that we begin to do this is by looking back and getting really clear about, like, what did I miss? What were the warning signs that I didn't pay attention to? Did I get a gut intuition, a body intuition, a signal from some part of me that said, I don't know, he's saying one thing, but it just feels different to me? Or, just that, can be like a feeling of fear or a feeling of dread or whatever that just sort of stops you, and it feels very bodily and very intuitive. That's really our instinctual protective aspect. And so you might look back and begin to notice, like, what was I not hearing or seeing or believing? That, was I really attached to what he was saying and not noticing what he was doing, and not seeing the disconnect and the lack of integrity between those two things? Was he pressuring me in some way to be exclusive or to have sex before I felt ready, and that was really uncomfortable? Or did I feel uncomfortable about something that was happening? Was he not hearing my no's and breaking my boundaries? Was he serving his own agenda? Was he sharing stories from his relationship past that, brought up red flags? And just going back and doing that assessment, not to blame yourself, not to say I should have known better, how stupid was I? Let's not do the beat up on yourself thing. That just makes it worse. With self-compassion, choose to be aware and to go back and think, like, what is it that I missed, and how can I become more educated? What are the gaps that I need to know so that I understand myself and understand men better and understand how relationship and communication, and what are some of the signals? Like, one of the top things that I like to share with people, and I got very, very skilled at in being single for as many years as I had been, was how to screen for the right guy. And that often meant starting by screening out the guys that were not so great. And I began to really get clear about what kind of questions to ask and what to watch for, what to see that was an error or a lie by omission, and what was something that was a truth that was shared that I didn't want to believe but was so important for me to pay attention to. And so when you have that in your tool belt, I like to call you like your love or relationship tool belt, your self-trust just elevates to a whole other level, because intuition is also informed by knowledge. And if anything, knowledge actually just helps us believe our body intuition, so that when we get a gut feeling or a gut reaction or a strong emotional reaction that we know is not an emotion but is an actual intuitive signal, we're more likely to trust it if we have some knowledge to back it up, to go, oh, this is what I'm seeing, this is what that means, and this is why I should be, running for the hills, or, just really marking that and noticing if there's other things that will show me that this might be a serious issue that I need to be mindful of. So learn to build trust in yourself so that you're not overly trusting with men and just believing that, he has the same intention as you, he's as sincere as you, that he's necessarily a great guy because he's choosing to project himself that way or appear that way. You're actually investigating a little bit deeper. And by the way, I'm not advocating that you walk in, mistrusting and skeptical and put him under a microscope. In fact, there's a way to be very open-hearted and very, very much your light, joyful, present, nice girl, hopeful self, and almost disarm him to the point that he'll tell you the truth about who he is. And you'll find out that that's either really great, and that means a yes to continue to get to know this person, or it's a very, very clear and strong no that is a warning that you're going to pay attention to and love yourself enough to protect yourself from that. So that's the first one. Second one is too understanding. Okay, nice girls are programmed to please. We're compassionate and empathic in our nature. In fact, that's one of our most powerful gifts, and it's also our biggest challenge. It's the place that we can trip up if we're not mindful. And so if we're pleasing and supporting and fixing and helping in order to belong or gain acceptance and to be loved, then we're kind of like looking for something outside of ourselves. We disown our power, and we unconsciously end up bartering caring for others as a way to get our own needs fulfilled and to feel needed as well, to feel secure, to feel supported, to feel safe. And so understanding to a fault, we can ignore red flags and forgive bad behavior and excuse why a man isn't showing up for us. Unconsciously adopt maybe the false belief that, our loving actions are enough to make the relationship work and keep the connection growing. And that's the nice girl shouldering effect, where they take on all the responsibility for managing, supporting, and growing a relationship. Often, and this is unconscious again, nice girls believe that their love will magically heal his past and his insecurities and his faults and his failures, in the way that we really hope that love will sometimes heal us. And we're trying to change him so that he'll love us in return. And that doesn't work. And here's where, if a woman a nice girl is just too understanding, she can really be sucked into indecision and addictions and money issues that he's having. Or I'm still in love with my ex drama, and all the time just starting to feel more insecure and uncertain and anxious. And again, the overdoing, the overgiving, expending tons of energy into him, into the relationship, hoping that it will actually become something that's lasting and fulfills all of her needs. In the end, what happens is that you're dating an insecure, flawed, or broken man, or a man who's taking advantage of you, and he takes the good stuff, he fills himself up, and he either keeps using you or he drops you the second that he finds something that actually inspires a woman who inspires him, because now he feels better about himself. And we've all heard that story about how, a woman will come in and make a man better. Suddenly he's dressing better. He loses, 20 or 30 pounds. He becomes more purposeful. Like, she puts him on as her self-improvement project. And then, when he feels good about himself, he leaves her. And then she's utterly devastated because she thought, oh, wait a minute, like, I just invested all this into this relationship, and this person just didn't feel anything for me and really didn't love me, just loved how I made him feel and loved what I was giving to him. And that's a real shock and it really is very heartbreaking. So what is the remedy for nice girls who give and give too much in the way of being too understanding? And take a sip here. Oh, yes, and here's the quote. You cannot change a man, and changing for you cannot change a man, and changing for me means losing you. So ultimately, the paradigm of the woman who falls into that dynamic of rescuing and supporting this other man and seeing him through his dark times, and thinks that she will come out of the other end of it with a man who's loving and loyal towards her, because look how much he supported and cared for him and took care, wanted to make his life better. And what she ends up with is a man who leaves her, right? Or she ends up having to change herself to accommodate his craziness, and then she doesn't recognize herself over time. Okay. So the two understanding remedy for this type of nice girl is really to give to herself first. Okay. Give to yourself first and then others. And when you give, you ensure that it really comes from a place of joy and abundance without expectation, need, or fear. And then this way, in the understanding part, you can be understanding. It doesn't mean you have to, I always say you can, really like a guy and you can, go out on a date with him and still let him walk away feeling esteemed and whole or maybe better about himself. But it doesn't mean you need to, kiss him, date him, let him be your boyfriend, marry him, right? You can just allow the connection to be what it is. You can give your support and understanding. You can make him feel good for the moment. And then you can go, wait a minute, there is no place that this person has enough to give back to me, looking at where he's at. And so if I'm really loving myself here, if I'm really putting my happiness first, and we'll talk more about that as one of the commitments to support you in your nice gal rehabilitation, it is to really just put giving to you first and then to others. Okay. And never giving from a place where you're secretly hoping that as you give it, something great will come back to you. Okay. And again, it's not that that's conscious, that's just sort of what happens over time. Okay. The other one is too romantic. We are really sold a bill of goods, so to speak, from, we're sold on a story of romantic movies, and always in romantic movies, love conquers all. And, he's the soulmate, the one and only, like nobody else could ever be. And, you have to overcome incredible obstacles to get that and earn that love, or you have to really prove that you're worth. He has to see all your brilliance and all your amazingness, or he sees all your flaws and he still loves you. Or you have incredible incompatibilities and somehow you manage to make it work. So those are all the things that are really sold in romantic movies. And while they feel really great, like you complete me, Jerry Maguire, none of that type of love is realistic or really true. And there's parts of it that are true, and that's what really hooks us, but there's a whole other aspect that doesn't. And so these unrealistic beliefs really create blind spots and traps that nice girls fall into. We want the dream of love so badly sometimes that we really open the door to falling for the idea of someone or the appearance of who he seems to be, or we fall into his potential. If this and this were different, then he could really be this, and I'll help him do that, right? And unconsciously, this really translates into minimizing and dismissing red flags, accepting his intentions at face value rather than investigating further, ignoring discrepancies between his actions and his words, clinging too desperately to him, to what you hope he'll be, going all in emotionally or sexually before trust and commitment is given. I mean, those are all examples of, things that tons of women have done. So if you think you're alone in that, or somehow, that you're the horrible one who made that mistake, trust me, there's thousands or hundreds of thousands of women behind that one. We've all made those errors. And so part of it is to just really start to have realistic expectations about a relationship. And again, this is where education and really comes into play, which is really understanding how do men really think, and what do they want, and what do I want, and what's important to me, and what do real relationships that have lasted some measure of time, or relationships that were successful for a period of time and then they outgrew each other, with really conscious loving people, and how did they navigate that? What did that look like? And where am I piling up a big long love list and a whole bunch of expectations, and what are some of the things maybe on my love list or that expectation list of what I'm really hoping to gain or have or feel or experience through love relationship? Where else in my life can I get that? What other relationships can also give me that same feeling? And so we also don't, weigh in that romantic relationship is the only way that we're fulfilling our happiness, the only way that we overcome our loneliness, the only way that we grow emotionally as human beings or deepen into our purpose or our authenticity. That it really becomes that you have a whole world, a whole life, a whole relationship with yourself and others in your community or in your fold, your inner circle, that begin to fulfill your love needs on multiple levels. And here's the thing, then you attract from abundance because you're so filled up, you're so sourced within your own self that you become irresistible, magnetic, hugely intoxicating and compelling to others, because the beingness of who you are, the presence of your energy is just radiating out into the world. And so you really don't want to depend on a man to rescue you from your loneliness, problems, or unhappiness. And this holds true for, nice guys that I coach as well. You need to find your own source of strength within, and really acknowledge how empowered you really are. And part of being empowered is knowing that I have multiple sourced ways to support myself. And I'm just thinking of it in terms of, the economic situation. Some of you may know I'm Canadian, so for my fellow Canadians, woot woot, and for my American parents and sisters, woot woot as well. I love you all. But we're hitting a really interesting and challenging place right now in Canada, and particularly in Alberta. And one of the provinces in Canada, Nova Scotia, failed to diversify, if that makes sense. They kind of put all their eggs in one basket. And so when we walk into a relationship and we load it up, it puts a lot of pressure on a relationship to be, for a man to be your all and to be your everything, and to do all that, just like Nova Scotia invested everything into one particular source of income. And they're now really tanking and really struggling. It creates a lot of suffering for people because they didn't have multiple sources, right? So just like you would do in economics, and just like you would do around having different education and support and ability within your own field or career, so that you could always be flexible, you could adapt to challenges that come your way. You want to really pad your life to be in a place where a man is simply adding to your world and you're adding to his from that place of abundance. So let go of the romantic notions of all, the be-all and end-all, the one and only soulmate when there's many, because otherwise there's a lot of fear and a lot of dependency that gets created in that. So let's unhook from that and just release those really strong romantic expectations. Instead, look at what it is that we truly need to feel fulfilled and loved in a romantic relationship, and what we need to feel fulfilled and loved and supported and connected in other relationships in our life, and grow and deepen into that. The other remedy that I would really suggest for the romantic who just comes in, eyes glazed over, rose-colored glasses, is that date with an attitude of earned rather than assumed trust. So yes, let your heart feel, let your heart hope, let your heart connect with him, but stop projecting your fantasy onto a man until you really know his character and his intentions, and whether he can give you what you want, because he might be a fantastic man, but he might not have what it takes. In other words, just by being himself, effortlessly and easily, he knows how to fulfill your particular love needs, and vice versa. So until it's real, until it's actually happening, don't buy into the fantasy or the idea of a man, the dream of love that you have. Wait for it to be actualized before you fall into full love and commitment with him. Okay. Yeah, and as you guessed it, nice girls are overgivers. So we had to have this one on the list, which is too giving. And here's the thing. I want you to write down this quote, so important. If you feel less than, you give more than. Okay. So if you're overgiving, it's because there's some kind of fear there. And so yes, it can be your conditioning, but that conditioning has a root of fear attached to it. Fear of not being enough, fear that you'll never be loved or chosen because your past experience has taught you that that's what happens. Fear that you won't be loved for yourself, that you actually are loved for what you do. So, the worst thing with an overgiver and their biggest fear of changing or transforming this in any relationship is thinking, well, if I stop doing that, then people are going to get mad at me. They're not going to like me. They're not going to want to hang out with me. They're not going to be around me. And my answer to that is, okay, great. Because if that's actually what they are, there's no genuine love and commitment towards you. There's no adoration. There's no, wow, I think you're special. I think you're fantastic. I think you're great just being you. And you want a man in your life, and you want people in your life that love you just for who you are, not because you do things for them. Because the worst feeling is knowing or suspecting or fear, or like having this horrible notion, well into, a romantic connection with someone, that they love you only for what you do for them, how much you give them, or how great you make them feel about themselves. Meanwhile, you never feel secure. You can never relax. You're always afraid. You're always, over trying, over giving, overdoing in order to just keep proving that you're worth loving, hoping desperately that they might love you in return. And that is a powerless and, that's setting yourself up to be heartbroken, basically. So let's get rid of the fear. The fear of loss and rejection. So what you can begin to do is really start to give in a way that is more balanced, so that you take away the neediness, the pressure, and the desperation that men are actually getting from you if you're an overgiver. Because here's what will happen. Good men will lose attraction and interest in you because they'll smell your fear. They'll see your fear. They'll assume you're insecure. They'll go, I want nothing to do with an insecure man or insecure woman, because I know what kind of drama and challenge that creates. And I know that I could never do enough and that would exhaust me. And they start to go into the story of what they know if they've experienced that or they've seen it in other people. And they'll simply, become disinterested. A not so good guy will go, awesome, this is great, I can exploit this, so I can fill up my love needs, and then I can just drop this girl when that it no longer serves me, and that let's avoid that. So nice girls need to learn how to give in a way that is balanced, so that they really begin to create more authentic connections, and ones that are really about people who value them value you just for being you. Where you don't have to peacock and show how great you are. And, a lot of one nice girl called it auditioning. Like, she'd be on a date, she'd feel like she's auditioning for the part, and she'd be jumping through a lot of hoops and they take a lot of effort. That's not a relaxed, authentic way to show up. And by learning how to receive, so this is a key with givers. They give and they give and they give. And guess what? We tend to attract our opposite. We almost have to in balance. So if you are a giver, you're going to attract takers. That's it's automatic. It's the polar opposite of where you are. It's the magnetic attraction from yin and yang, right? So the one opposite over here. And so if you want to change this, you have to learn how to be a good receiver. Because good men are givers, and you want to attract more of those. And because they're the ones who can make you genuinely happy, who are, really interested in who you are, who want to fill you up and watch you glow, and then take credit for, like, look how great I made her feel. And that's how a man, he invests in you, creates a heart-to-heart connection. So note that being overly sweet and kind and generous and nice kind of makes you a bit more of a doormat than a catch, and that men will really value and love women that they respect, not women who give to the point of invalidating themselves or exhausting themselves, or and besides, giving too much after a while just makes us feel resentful and empty and exhausted, and the opposite of the attraction factor, the thing that makes us irresistible and magnetic. Okay. All right, guys, give me a moment here and I'll kind of be right back. Okay, sorry guys, I'm back. Appreciate your patience. I am a single mom. and at the moment, and so I just had to hand off the little guy there. He was having a little nap. Okay, he usually sleeps a little bit longer, so there we go. He woke up probably hearing my voice. All right. Yeah, and so as I was saying, like one of the things, actually, I think I skipped a slide here, so let's back up a little bit. Okay, well, let's dig into the next one, which is too isolated. So you might start to notice that some of these kind of follow it. An overgiver after time is so exhausted, they eventually isolate themselves. The woman who is too trusting tends to also give too much or is too romantic. And this is sort of what begins to happen, is that mistrust follows all of these things. If we've been too understanding, then we suddenly, are no longer as trusting and we begin to isolate. If we've been too romantic and then we got burned in the process, we're probably going to mistrust ourselves and men, and then, start to isolate ourselves. So this one makes me really sad, because what happens is that beautiful, amazing, heartfelt women who, need and want connection, which we all need it, but heart-centered people, giving, loving, supported, we are filled up by connection. We're filled up by being of service. We're filled up by sharing and connecting. And so when we don't have that, and we start to isolate as a reaction to the pain that we have experienced, the damage that's been created, it just compounds, because here we've been damaged and we're naturally isolating in order to feel better and sort of get our emotional equilibrium back. But the isolation in itself actually begins to spiral us down into a deeper sense of disconnect and depression and despair. And so too much disappointment, heartbreak, and betrayal can really just cause a nice girl to hide away and isolate. And the resulting part is this resentment, this embarrassment, or confusion, or fear of rejection, emotional exhaustion, and this mistrust that really prevent nice girls from connecting with others, for fear that the painful past is going to repeat itself. And in time, if time alone was enough, we could just use that time to heal rather than hide, then a nice girl can sort of understand her missteps and rebuild her self-esteem and empower her intuition and really adopt the tools and the mindset to change how they show up in relationship. And that's really what we want to use that time for. But if we use that time just to hide, just because we don't know what else to do, and those negative feelings that we're talking about here will just sort of, they'll progress and they'll repeat themselves, or they'll haunt the nice girl to the point that she feels like she can't reach out and she can't connect for fear that it will happen again. And so the nice girl fear factor actually just begins to grow exponentially and get stronger to the point that she just doesn't know what to do with that. It becomes too heavy of a burden to carry. And the other part of it is that nice girls who isolate themselves for so long, their love needs aren't getting met, their emotional needs aren't getting met, the fulfillment needs aren't getting met. They're so afraid of everything. It's sort of like they're afraid of their own shadow. And so they stop reaching out, they stop taking risks, they stop, maybe even doing personal things for themselves, taking care of themselves as well. And so the cost really becomes quite great, and they go into starvation mode, which actually increases their vulnerability, because then if they ever risk kind of coming out of hiding, coming out of the cave again, they're literally starving. And when you're starving, you're less likely to be as discerning, you're less likely to be as clear or as mindful about what's actually happening. So it makes them even vulnerable to compromising again, accommodating again, overgiving again, desperately clinging to what I call substandard forms of love out of emotional hunger. Now, if you think of this in an analogy of food, it kind of works the same way. So if you're starving and you go out on the street and let's say someone offers you, I like to use this example because I'm mostly a vegetarian, and it was for a majority of my life until I got pregnant. And I'm not a huge fan of McDonald's, so for those who love it, I apologize. But think of something you hate, like something you really don't like, or is substandard, or you think is low quality food, or not like the thing that you love and just could eat a ton of. And so someone offers you a McDonald's burger, and even if you're a vegetarian, it is against your values. Even if it's a thing that you don't really want, even if you think it tastes horrible, and you would normally never allow yourself to stoop that low to eat McDonald's, and someone offers you that because you are absolutely starving emotionally to death, right? You'll eat it. You'll eat it, and you might beat yourself up and think, I'm weak, I don't have any willpower, which we all know that the willpower is extremely minimal in our built-in human psychology, whole other conversation there. And you will accept it. And because you are so hungry that your need for physical sustenance is greater than any part of you that would say this is against who I am, not the highest standard of what I deserve and desire, you take what you can get. And that's what isolation does to a nice girl over time. It makes her vulnerable to take what she can get rather than what she truly deserves, what actually is supportive of her, what grows her, what protects her, what helps her to feel fully fulfilled in her life. And so you might be lucky and you might come out of isolation, just meet a really terrific guy who fills you up and rebuilds your trust again, and that's great. But the more likelihood is that you're going to meet the guy who goes, that girl is hungry, I could offer her a scrap of something and she would feel so grateful and just come running back for more. And so that's why isolation for a nice girl is incredibly problematic, okay, and incredibly risky. Here's my quote: you cannot avoid love out of fear without suppressing your own brilliance, authenticity, and happiness. And so there's the other cost. Not only do you risk, being more vulnerable to people who could take advantage and not cherish and love and adore you and support you the way that you deserve to be and love you up, you actually also suppress all of yourself. You suppress your brilliance, your authenticity, your happiness, because you don't allow all of you to come out into the world boldly and authentically, because that feels too fear factor-ish, right? And too risky to do that. We're built in our psychology. Our ego is so driven towards and so programmed, and it's very rewarded for this programming in our culture to avoid pain and seek pleasure. And so if the pain becomes so great, the only pleasure a nice girl knows is to isolate herself. And that really tells me that you've been through a lot. And what we need in there is compassion. We need self-compassion. And so, yes, you need to spend a time in hiding. I totally agree with that. But that hiding shouldn't be hiding out of embarrassment, hiding your needs, suppressing who you are, overeating, and pushing down your feelings. You spend that time in healing, right? See the difference. It's not isolation. It's not hiding out. It's actually that you're put yourself in a safe space to heal and be supported. And you do that for a time, reaching out to others and really, getting your love cup filled up and repairing the damage that's been presented to you. And then you come out of hiding and you get your love needs met through a dedicated self-love and self-care practice. And you commit to that. And so you can commit to that while you're nurturing and healing. And then you're really going to reinforce that. Because guess what? If you are filled up, if you are not emotionally starving for love, if you have, a full cup or a mostly, more than half cup full kind of idea, or you're overflowing with it, some person comes along and offers you something that is less than, you are not going to be tempted to get it. You're going to go, you know what? I trust and know that I have like an amazing meal back home waiting for me, or I'm going to this amazing restaurant with all my friends and we're going to laugh and have a great time, and I'm going to have this awesome, incredible favorite thing that I love. Why would I ever accept your cheap, offer to me of which really you get more from it than I do, right? You'll have that sort of natural mindset. And so in that being said, you want to build a really strong support system and really healthy friendships that prevent you from isolating yourself, okay? And, people who accept you for who you are, people who will love you in your vulnerability, people who will want to protect your heart, who will affirm you, who will love you even if you've made mistakes, right? In fact, probably give you more unconditional compassion and regard because of it, okay? That's who you want to go for. All right, this one's the biggie. So let me take a drink of water here. Nice girls are too loving. Okay, they tolerate the intolerable. They support despite a lack of reciprocity. They believe in promises and ignore inaction. They hope even when the situation is hopeless. So there's the romantic in there. There's the overgiver in there. There's the isolator in there. There's all of the nice girl behaviors that trip us up kind of show up in the too loving model. Nice girls, love when really others have packed up and moved on. They love even when they shouldn't, and they lose themselves in love. They love, too much for too little, and really out of fear that they're unlovable. And they give too much for too little. They tolerate the intolerable, in the hopes that their love will really change him, or it will change the relationship for better. So it's really that idea that if I just do more and I give more and I am more, and I'm good enough and I'm more than good enough, and I believe that he is good enough. If I believe in him, then maybe he'll believe in me. If I love him, maybe he'll love me back. And so we really give ourselves away to be loved. Here's the difference. If we trusted that our needs could be met without having to overgive and sacrifice and please and support and perfect and accommodate and try hard, we wouldn't try so hard. We could relax. We could have that balance of receive and give. We could lean back in the chair and we could allow ourselves to take our time and not rush and not feel this desperate need to nail it down. We could be comfortable in uncertainty, and we could be vulnerable and open-hearted, yet have incredibly strong boundaries and high standards that would keep us safe. Okay, so we wouldn't have to hide our heart away or isolate or not show parts of ourselves out of fear that those parts of us will be rejected. And now, again, it's a totally natural reaction that having been deceived, having been betrayed and rejected and abandoned, that, nice girls really have a deep sadness and an emptiness and a mistrust. And that creates that fear, and that fear is driving these nice girl behaviors. So I always like to remind people, come into my community, you are not your nice gal behaviors. They are a result of having really crappy, horrible things happen to you in your life, whether it was bullying in childhood and sexual or child abuse, if it was neglect, if it was abandonment, if it was a constant barricading of your personal boundaries to the point that you weren't allowed to say no or feel angry or have a right to say that doesn't feel good or I want my own space. Crappy relationships. The first guy that I ever had a huge huge crush on in school humiliated me, and it seems like it's just a small thing, but it sets a template, right? And the next guy cheated on me, and the other guy was gay, and I didn't know it, and I thought something was wrong with me, and so there was this, there can be this series of early love mapping experiences that make us feel less than and not good enough, that we got that message of being unlovable in some way, and we've all got that. And all a nice girl is somebody who is naturally by her heart giving, loving, empathic, supportive, nurturing, a healer, helper, an intuitive, an empathic person who really just wants to connect and wants to learn and wants to grow in relationship with other people, and has the best of intentions at heart, and goes out just being that in the world and gets stamped on and stomped on and squished down and told that she's not enough and not okay. And of course, you would fear connecting as a result of that. You would fear opening your whole self as a result. And so stop blaming yourself for the natural psychological responses that you have. Stop thinking that you're your nice girl behaviors. They're much bigger and much more than that. Your nice girl behaviors are just the way that your ego is saying, here's how I can avoid pain and seek pleasure. Here's how I can get the love that I really want. But it's that cheap form of love, right? It's the, okay, people like me because I do nice things for them. People like me because I'm needed. People like me because I try really hard and I'm perfect, or I please them, or I support them, or I'm so accommodating that they just love being around me because they always get their way. And that means that the kind of people that you end up attracting as a nice gal is less than what you truly deserve and desire. And so as we reprogram as a nice girl, the nice girl rehabilitation is really just about becoming more authentically you by knowing how to get the fear factor down and increasing your self-trust, your self-worth, your inner sense of certainty and security and safety, because you won't change unless you feel safe, okay? Getting that so strong within yourself that you have the ability to never compromise, and you have the ability to say, I'm not going to sit here and jump through hoops and prove that I'm worthy of it. I am, because I'm me. I'm worthy of love. I'm worthy of respect. I'm worthy of trust, and I present myself that way. And you either greet me and meet me in that place, or this is a no deal. And it's really easy to do that from that position and that mindset. And that's really why what I offer in terms of supporting you. So here's a No More Nice Gal, summed up, in a nutshell. Stop chasing, perfecting, giving, accommodating, and supporting to be loved. Know you're worthy, worthy of being loved, and love will find you. Okay, know your worth, and love will find you. That is the message. So here's your bonus part, and this is really, really close to my heart because I have been, a victim, and we're all victims if you've ever dated a narcissist and you know what this looks like, or maybe you don't know, and I'm going to share parts and aspects of the description for you today that really wake you up and go, okay, wait a minute, I think I am with a narcissist, or I have been with one before and I never quite figured that out, or great, now that I know what that looks like and sounds like, I'm going to deepen into my education so I know that this is a man that when I see these signs, I'm going to avoid and not be fooled by. Okay. So the empath and the narcissist have sort of a, classic opposites attract. So the empath is a giver and the narcissist is a taker. So remember, if you're an overgiver and you don't know how to receive and allow in your life, you will automatically attract people who are takers. It's like a stamp on your forehead that they can go, great, there's a person who just gives and gives and gives and doesn't ask for anything in return. Awesome, I'm going to go to that person and I'm going to take like crazy. Now, of course, it doesn't appear that way in the beginning. It doesn't work that way. The narcissist actually builds the empath up over time, puts her on a pedestal, sells her the dream of love, fulfills her love needs like no other man. And imagine how intoxicating and seductive and irresistible that looks like and becomes when you're suddenly lavished with a high level of adoration, attention, and affection that you're not accustomed to, because you're typically with the guy who doesn't show up for you, or the people who ignore you or overlook you or undervalue, or they give you just a little bit just to keep leading you on and the inconsistent type that just gonna go, okay, here's a little bit, here's a scrap of food, right, for your love starvation, just enough to keep you running towards me to try to get more. So here's this man who's all in, he's overly attentive, he's charming, he's, very likely, as it was the case in my case, was, my dream guy, even physically, was exactly, the kind of, in fact, it's odd and ironic, and you wouldn't think this is the case, but lifestyle-wise, we were very, very compatible. He was a vegetarian, I was a vegetarian. He was into yoga, I was into yoga. Our lifestyles were similar. We were both self-employed. Like it was almost, to me, it was a match made in heaven. We both loved to do the same activities. It had the same interests. It was incredible how aligned we were in that way. So add the fact that he was so attentive, and I was so unaccustomed to that, and I had been in isolation for a long time. My love needs were very depleted, and so I was very vulnerable to everything he was filling me up with. So here's what happens. The empath is an intuitive. She intuitively senses and absorbs other people's pain as though it was her own. She lacks those energetic boundaries and maybe even, verbal boundaries, and therefore an ability to protect herself. So it's very easy when you can feel other people's pain. You naturally want to fix it. You naturally want to support. You naturally want to give. And all nice girls have that in common. They're very, very heartfelt. The empaths just go so deeply that they feel their feelings. They feel the feelings of others as if it is them. And that's how I always described my experience in my life, is that I would feel other people's pain as if it was my own. And in my immaturity, and I mean that's just in my development, and along the way of maturing into, a wiser woman and a better adult, having not grown up in a great way and needing to learn those skills later, especially when I started being a coach and working one-on-one consults imbalance with people, I felt very responsible for them. I didn't know how to cut off that energy of just like, it's, all I can do is help and support them and listen and be there and be that reflective mirror for them. And what they do with it is up to them. I was overly invested, in them doing something. What I realized is because that is an empath, I was absorbing that energy. In fact, sometimes I would act it out or carry it for them. They would just unload it onto me, and I would be the place, like, who I would, eat all their anxiety and eat all their depression and eat all their sadness and eat all their stuff. And it's still something that, makes me an incredibly brilliant coach, because I know exactly what's going on. I know exactly what patterns someone has. I'm very intuitively plugged in. But if I don't have the line drawn in the sand of what's my responsibility and what's theirs, and I don't have a place to unload all of that, then it really begins to affect me emotionally and affect my body. And I would venture to say that more than half of the clients that I've worked with over the years, thousands of people that I've helped and supported and gotten to know and been very inspired and grown as a result of working with them as well, common empathy. And so in particular, because of this vulnerability, an empath will very easily and quickly bond with a narcissist. And then if you have those other things like I did, like he's your perfect type, and you're compatible, and you could really see a future and a potential with this person, they're really building it up, then that connection, that investment, that dream is being built very quickly. So the narcissist, really, again, the empath wants to help and support. So if you're a nice girl who needs to be needed, you're really going to be vulnerable to this type of person as well. Or if you're that giver, over giver, you're going to attract that taker. And it's because you just want to help to repair the narcissist wounds and eradicate their pain. You can really see it, and you're getting hooked into that. Here's what happens though. A narcissist is literally the archetype of a vampire. And they drain the empath's energy to build up their own reserves, and then in so create this imbalance of power that they begin to use against their advantage. Now this happens, over time. And for those of you who are familiar with the domestic abuse cycle, narcissistic abuse follows very similarly. It can be very overt, or very subtle, or very subtle for a time, and then very overt. And the empath, and go back to the nice girl who just assumes that everyone else's good intentions are, she's too trusting. She just believes that, he's as crazy about me as I am about him. And in some ways it appears to be that, that he's as intoxicated and, and as enraptured as you are in him. And so for all appearance's sake, for all feelings' sake, you're just like, you're all in. One of the key things to note is that toxic, abusive, narcissistic, damaged or wounded men, or alcoholic men, or addicted men, they all have one common thing, and they all have one thing in common. And that one particular thing, which you want to make a mental note of in the dating world, is that they try to rush the connection. They try to sleep with you very quickly. They want to spend all their time with you. They're wooing you. They want to marry you fast. They're trying to do all of those things to ensure that, because there's only so much energy and so long they can kind of put out the ruse, right? There's only so long they can cover up who they really are before you see the wreck or the damage or the destruction or the woundedness or the, flawed, toxic aspects of who they really are. So there's only so long. And that's why they're going to try to emotionally lay it on as much as possible, move the intensity of the relationship very quickly, hook, line, and sinker you, right? Like just get you under their, the palm of their hands, so that by the time their stuff starts to show up, you're too shocked and confused to realize what just hit you. And that is really, really, really true with a narcissist. Like it seems to come out of left field. And then the empath is sitting there in confusion and shock and disbelief, and is tempted, like the romantic, to go back to, but this is who he really is, and this is how it's been. And now you're so invested, you're so attached, you're so starving for love, that you're actually willing to kind of ignore or dismiss or I forgot the word I was looking for there, but not really, you're in disbelief. You're kind of thinking, well, you're very able to rationalize at that point and more likely to minimize, that's the word I was looking for, minimize his behavior. And if he's a covert narcissist, meaning the signs are very subtle and the manipulation is very emotional and it's emotional abuse and not other sort of overt forms of and you're not seeing it, sexual addiction, or you're not seeing other behaviors that are really, really big red flags, it's even more difficult to trust yourself in that moment, because realize not only now do you not sort of trust him, but you want to trust him, you don't trust yourself. Having gone through enough heartache, enough deception, enough disappointment, nice girls over time don't know what to trust and what not to trust. They get really confused. And then if you're going out there in the most websites and most dating advice, so most dating advice is crap, let's just put it that way. And then even if you do find really great advice, it might not be relative to you. Like, it might not actually be specific to you as a nice girl, and it might not be specific to your situation. And then you kind of get lost between, well, should I do this or should I do that? And that's really what ends up happening in this spiral down that nice girls really get caught in, which again often leads them to just isolate and say, I give up, I don't want to date anymore, this is too painful, I can't do this. Or you try and try and try, and you just, every single relationship erodes your self-esteem and your self-worth even more deeply, and your sense of trust and your sense of what is real and what isn't real anymore. It's absolute and total despair to live in that kind of state, because you have lost yourself and you've lost any sense of, how do I navigate in the world? So it's deeply, deeply soul destroying and painful to experience this to any level with any kind of relationship. It's particularly destructive to an empath. And if you have talked to, or if you have been that empath who came out the other side with a narcissist, you have PTSD when you walk out. Your nervous system is shot. Your body is on hypervigilant mode. You probably have insomnia. You probably have depression. You feel a tremendous despair. You don't trust anyone, including yourself. You have no sense of where your ground is, and you very likely feel suicidal. Like, so empty and so attached and so dependent on him as your lifeline and your life source. And I'm going to talk more about how that actually happens. So, the empath's intention is sincere. She just wants to, her desire is to love and to heal and to care. But the narcissist actually just wants control. So everything he's doing is a manipulation to gain a sense of control and this power over you. So the more the giver, the nice girl, loves and cares the empath, the more powerful and controlling the narcissist becomes. And the imbalance becomes greater and greater between them. So, the more lower the empath becomes, then the higher the narcissist begins to feel. And so now powerless and dependent, and you don't know how it happened, by the way. Every empath is shocked to find herself in that situation. She begins to frantically actually seek his love, validation, confirmation, and acceptance. And each cry for help just makes the narcissist feel more disdain for her and feel more worthy. So he's better and she's less than. And this battle sort of continues, and this power goes. So the empath becomes weakened, and she kind of watches helplessly as a narcissist wreaks havoc in her life, causing pain and trauma and destruction. And as she tries to fend off his charms and his blame, whether that's again overt or covert, she can't reconcile that this loving, attentive, charismatic man that she was once attracted to is really this heartless, abusive sociopath standing in front of her eyes that has no conscience and cares only about himself and not her. Emotionally exhausted, lost, depleted, and debilitated, the empath struggles to defend herself, understand what happened, and cut the ties in the relationship. And so I want to be really clear. The empath is never to blame for the malicious harm that is caused to her by the narcissist. She is absolutely a victim. And there is a whole abuse cycle. And again, it's the same cycle that is in Stockholm Syndrome when a person's abducted and they fall in love with their captor. These are psychological responses that any person and any woman, nice gal or not, would end up feeling or experiencing as a result of having been in those types of situations. So again, one of my biggest mandates is to prevent heartache for you, to stop you from being harmed. I've already been down that road. So many of my beautiful clients have already been down that road. If you can learn from us, learn from this webinar, learn from other resources I can support you with, then you can not be one of those victims. One of my absolute favorite books of all time is The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker. And every woman should read that book. It is, you know, the manual to prevent yourself from being a victim of rape and being a victim of abuse in any form. It is the way that you can, he has subsequent books of keeping your children safe. Like, it is the thing that we need to arm ourselves with, because we love and value ourselves so much that we say, I put my happiness, my well-being, and my safety absolutely first. And that is, by the way, hint, hint, the number one commitment that I had, that came out of my, you know, bottom of the barrel, you know, took years to financially, emotionally recover, you know, my health, even because I had horrible insomnia after an anxiety. You know, it took a long time to recover from the damage that a short-term relationship with a narcissist had created. And so you are, you know, you're absolutely a victim if you've experienced this type of person or any toxic man who misleads you and deceives you in some particular way. And what I want for you to get out of it is just that determination to say, I'm going to not let this break me. I'm going to rebuild myself. I am going to, even the guy who cheats on you, that betrayal, it's so soul damaging. It can so stir up that story of I'm not good enough, or I'm not lovable, or I'm not worthy. And that's what I want to change for you. That's my mission and my message. You are worth loving. And that is wholly true, no matter what your past is, no matter what mistakes you've made, no matter if you were, like me, a victim and I allowed myself to be victimized further, and I had to look at that, like, how was the codependent in me showing up in that moment, and how do I make sure that I never do that again to myself, and loving and valuing me? What were my nice gal vulnerabilities that made me an easy target for him? You know, what if I'd had it would have prevented me from being with him when I saw early warning signs, and when my intuition in my body went off like crazy, even though I didn't have the knowledge to back it up. How could I have trusted that? How would I empower my intuition? And that was the other commitment that came out of that experience. In fact, the whole No More Nice Gal wouldn't exist without this guy. So I guess we can thank him for that. Thank that experience, because I really used it to build me stronger and to make me better. And then I thought, I want to take the pain of what happened to me, and I want to use it to support other women. First of all, to prevent them from being in that place, or if they do find themselves in that type of relationship, to help them get out and rebuild their self-worth and their lives again. And so that is why I do what I do, and I am you know, devoted to that, and do a lot of that selflessly and in my own personal time. And I do it because I really just want you to know that you are worth loving, and nothing can change that. You are inherently worthy. And let's have you know that through and through every single part of you. And that second commitment that came out of that was, I will always trust my intuition. Unequivocally. There is nothing so compelling about a man, remember that starving for love, that, you know, whatever meal he's laid out in front of me, even if it is my perfect meal, if I think it comes with poison, right? If I think that it's going to make me powerless or dependent on him, or you know, make me have to you know, compromise my standards in order to receive that meal, I can create that meal for myself. And there's lots of other sources I can get it from. And when you have that kind of confidence and competence, then you're able to really move through these nice girl vulnerabilities and support yourself. So one of the key things is for a nice girl to build a commitment, to build a strong self-worth that is independent of another's validation. So the other beautiful client that whose story is, and beautiful face is coming in my mind, you know, she was so validated, like he just filled her love need to be affirmed. You know, her love language was words of affirmation, and he just laid it on thick, right? And it felt very sincere and real to her, and she was starving for it, so she just ate it up, right? Ignoring the other bad behavior and the other ways that he actually tore her down and made her feel less than. So for my overgivers, this is a really quick quote I love too, is trying to make a man love you by being indispensable will make you his, sorry, that's supposed to be made, not made. Thank you, spell check. Made mother booty call, not the love of his life. Okay. The other one for the romantics, don't hold on because you think there's no one else. You've got to believe that you're worth more than being repeatedly hurt or disappointed by someone who doesn't care about you. All right. Let's talk about the 3 love skills that that actually support you to be less vulnerable, protect your heart, protect yourself, and they're really skills that you must succeed at in love to avoid heartache and to grow. And so the first skill is self-trust. So remember that commitment of I will always trust my intuition no matter what. It doesn't matter if I have a reason, doesn't matter if I've seen a red flag. Again, it's great to have that education because it help, your mind can help go, wait a minute, this is why your body is saying something's wrong. But to know that part of us is, wired in and has this vast amount of knowledge to back it up, even if our conscious mind isn't aware of what it is. To also have such high standards and boundaries that you will never compromise on, that builds a huge amount of strength and personal power and helps you to trust yourself because I am not going to be tempted by the McDonald's burger when I know I can have like one of my favorite things is salad or sushi. Okay, it's pretty much, or like smoothies. I would go nuts over any of those. And so if I know that I can go get that, I'm going to trust that even if I had to wait 2 hours, it would be worth the wait, right? So you're not so desperate for love that you take whatever you can get and fill up with that when really the right guy, you can miss the right guy because you're dating Mr. Wrong. That one hurts. Or you show up not healed from Mr. Wrong and Mr. Right's in front of you, but you can't trust it because you've been through too much crap. I have one of those regrets too, right? And that never feels good. So the other thing is when you trust yourself to make the right choices. So if you've made the wrong choice in the past, then it's hard to walk into a next relationship not second guessing and feeling doubt around what should I do in this situation? What should I say? How should I handle this? What did that mean? What about that, right? And so if you are one of those people who thinks that dating is the exception to the rule, it's not. Like career, like wanting to be good or, wanting to be great or master anything requires confidence and requires competence. So if you don't have self-trust, you have no confidence. And if you have less competency, meaning less knowledge about how to build a connection with a man, who to avoid, who to date, all of those things that you need to learn, then your self-trust is incredibly low. So if you want to build it, you got to build the knowledge. You've got to build confidence in yourself through intuition, standards and boundaries that keep you safe, having knowing that you're going to make the right choice, even if you're tempted with, chocolate or something, that you're going to say no to that. Or you're going to say no to McDonald's, right? Because you have those other things that are empowering you, and you need the knowledge to go with it. Okay, so that's the piece, confidence. Confidence comes from absolutely knowing who to date and who not to, how to screen for love, signs and red flags that you should look for. So getting educated here is huge. The internal piece of confidence is your self-love, your self-worth, and living a life that you love. That shields you, it protects you from the vulnerability of looking to someone outside of you for validation, for happiness, to fulfill you, to give you direction, to affirm who you are and help you become your best self, because you're already doing that within yourself. So that's the internal version, is the self-love and the self-worth, and living a life you love creates that confidence. And it also looks like competence, understanding men, how they think, how to make a heart-to-heart connection with a man. So if you learn who to screen out and who to screen in, so you know how to date for, I call it my date for love system, and you know who to date and you're with the right guy, great. How do you make a heart-to-heart connection with him? How do you share your feelings with him in a way that he actually feels inspired to meet your needs and to fill you up and affirm you and not go, this is drama, or you're being emotional, right? Don't you love that one? Because you probably don't trust yourself if you had a man react badly to that in the past. So do you see how this all kind of comes full circle? So we need to build those love skills of building your trust again, building your confidence and your competence and all of those things that really looks like, which looks like self-respect and self-love and self-care and self-worth on the internal level, and then translating all of that into a relationship. How to get your needs met. Because here's the thing, we don't go into relationships, we don't stay in relationships where our needs aren't met, except nice girls. We keep giving and giving and giving and loving and loving and loving and supporting, hoping eventually one day someone might fulfill our love needs. And other people look at us like we're crazy, thinking, man, if my needs aren't getting met, I'm out of there. Like there's no point being with someone. That's the whole point of, is that that person fills your love need, and it's usually there's 2 or 3, and they fulfill yours, vice versa. And you do that because being you, authentic you, not the programmed, I'm programmed to be nice, or I'm out of fear I'm being nice. It's actually that being yourself naturally and effortlessly and easily draws the same person to you that's compatible with that. And there's a balance of give and take. And there is mutual trust and support, right? So the 3 pillars of, you guys might have heard it last week in our program, our webinar, the 3 foundational pieces that need to be in every relationship, and it's your criteria for whether you're on track or off track. So again, having filters, this is one of those boundaries or standards, right? This is a standard you want to have from now on. Looks like trust, love and like, right? Because at first it's going to be I like you, and then it can evolve into I love you. Because you can love someone and not like them, and there's a problem with that. You need to like and love each other. So trust, love and like, and respect. And if anyone ever goes against one of those, that's a huge red flag, right? That's another filter that you can go through. It's like if one of those things is missing, there is no opportunity for love, because you cannot love and like someone you don't trust. And if you don't trust them, you can't respect them. And if you don't respect them, you can't love and like them. So you see how that kind of works together? Yeah. Okay. Right, and a part of competence, as I said, is knowing who to avoid and what kind of men are actually worth your time, and knowing how to find them, right? So you need to know who to date and how to date. You need to know how to create that inspired heart connection, and you need to learn to pad those vulnerabilities, right? So that you don't trip yourself up in the process. So you deserve it, and I believe in you to have it. A man who cherishes your feelings and thoughtfully cares for you and desires to make you happy and hears your needs and wants to fulfill them. A man who loves and adores and cherishes and respects and appreciates you. That's the way it's supposed to be. So if you're not feeling good with the relationship you're in, or you haven't felt good in relationships in the past, then we're missing the mark, and some of these things we're missing. And knowing it will help you actually steer towards what you would be looking for, because it's the opposite of the crap that you've experienced in the past. So I am super excited about this. I am excited about the possibility of love for you, and I'm building on a whole process here that will help support you to get closer to that love and to know where to find it. So next week's webinar is where I share my signature 7-step love-worthy system. So remember my rock bottom, my narcissistic moment, or not my narcissistic moment, my moment of being stupid and being with a narcissist. And I say that lovingly and with a sense of lightness. You don't know what you don't know. And the fact is that people can deceive you. Some people are very good. He was brilliant at lying, brilliant manipulator, very, very, very skilled at seducing women. And I actually ended up, because he was very good at it, discovering other women who had been on the receiving end of him was very affirming for me, in terms of the fact that, there wasn't anything personal about me in particular. In fact, he probably treated me better than some of the other ones, which is interesting, but it was still pretty horrible. And we all kind of helped heal and support each other through that. But my rock bottom in the gutter moment with that, and when I peeled myself off, was these commitments that came out of it. And it's built into that love-worthy system of not only protecting your worth, growing your worth, and aligning it so that you are acting worthy to feel worthy, and because you are worthy, you're attracting only what's worthy of you. And that's really the process that is going to pad your vulnerabilities, keep you safe, allow you to be open-hearted and giving and romantic and loving and all the things that you truly are, without fear that you're going to be exploited and deceived and heartbroken and disappointed. Okay, so this is the way that you get to be your true nice gal self, without the nice girl vulnerabilities, without the nice girl behaviors, without the fear factor, and you're free to be yourself. So imagine what it it would feel like, what it would be like to get all of that crap off your shoulders and out of your life, to actually know that you're worth loving and to trust yourself in that process of finding love and feeling more lovable within yourself. So that is what is coming up next week. I'm super excited about that. In the meantime, please send me your questions. We are going live next week. So live on the program, and I will be doing Q&A. So you can reach me at love@thelovecoach.com or just reply to the webinar reminder email and just pop me a question, about anything that came up, anything that stirred up in you, specific or unspecific, global or, targeted. Whatever you got out of our time together, and maybe include in that question, like, what did you get from it? And what was your biggest aha moment? You can also go to the No More Nice Gal private Facebook group and ask to be added. And that's just at facebook.com/group/No More Nice Gal. And join our love community. There's tons of support in there. There's like-minded women just like you who will love you up and support you and give you that unconditional compassion and regard and acceptance. And they'll relate to your mistakes. They'll relate to your strengths. They'll relate to your brilliance, and they'll affirm you and support you. And I will be there to do the same. And so that's a great place to also share your aha moments, share your questions, share inspiration, support other women, and allow yourself to also receive support. So I cannot wait to see you in the next week's webinar. I look forward to hearing your comments and being a part of my No More Nice Gal community and continuing to support you to grow in love. And so with my parting message, my overall message, soak this into your heart and feel it deeply. You are worth loving. And I'll see you soon. Bye.